Is there anything that you learned since our last recording that has expanded your outlook on life?
Yes, especially one or two things, I would say.
Okay.
As I was writing my bachelor thesis, I was really getting more into the research environment. So I was at a chair where mostly PhD students were working, and also postdocs and my professor. And then I learned really how research looks like and how it's happening, and also how to read and interpret scientific papers. And the other thing that I learned is how to write them myself. So it was not a paper, it was a thesis, but how to really focus on what's important, how to plan your research, and how to write it up at the last stage.
So reading and writing scientific and research papers.
Writing only a thesis. I was reading papers. There was at some point there was the idea to also publish a paper, but now it was just the thesis. Yes.
What's the difference between a paper and a thesis?
So I know only about three theses that you could write. So it's the bachelor's thesis, master's thesis, and then dissertation or PhD thesis. Maybe there are other kinds of theses, but these are the ones I'm familiar with. And yeah, you write it when you finish one part of your degree, so either your bachelor's, your master's, or PhD. And then also maybe during the bachelor's, but mostly after the bachelor's or even after the master's. When you're doing your research, then you can write papers to publish in journals, like, for example, Nature or Science or Physical Review or something like this.
Okay.
And that's when you're kind of finishing your education to be a researcher and doing your research as work, I would say. That's the difference. So when you're writing a thesis, it's it's part of the education, and when you're writing papers, it's when you're working as a researcher afterwards. And also papers are much shorter. So for example, the paper that published the structure of the DNA was just 1 page. And
really?
Yeah, it was just 1 page by Crickson and Watson, I think. Watson and Crick from the 50s or 60s. And it was just 1 page, 1 image and 1 page. So the image was 1 page. But other research papers that I read were also not that long. Most of them, I would say, less than 15 pages. Sometimes only 4 or this. And thesis, I would say, start really short. Thesis starts at 30 pages or 40. And they can go to 100, 200, 300 pages, I would say. So they're much longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are about more stuff, so that they have more contents. Just I would say have to explain stuff in more detail. So for example, the methods and the background, so the theory, you have to explain in a thesis. But if you're writing a paper, then you can keep these parts really short, because you know that the people that are reading this are familiar with the topic, and mostly even familiar with some of the basic methods.
So when you're reading these research papers, are you doing it for fun? Are you reading like journals for fun? Are you like exploring that, or is it more related to your field of study and what you're doing?
I wouldn't say that's two different things, but But the most I read were just for what I do at the chair. So it was for my research. But as this is now finished, I have some saved that I want to read for fun. Some even printed out. So it's interesting, because I didn't knew before that you can have access to really cutting edge research, and you have the same access as a researcher from university. I have to say that a lot of the papers that I downloaded. I had research too because of my university. So
Mhm.
they're affiliated with a lot of online resources, so that I don't have to pay anything. But mostly all of them I also found for free somewhere else. So you really can
Okay.
get research from just 1 or 2 weeks ago, in all kinds of fields, and then it's the plain technical research. But it's a lot of times it's especially hard to understand. So especially if it's not your field, it's really hard to understand because you have to really go sentence by sentence. For example, the paper from my advisor, he's a PhD student,
Okay.
was
And again, you're at the Technical University of Munich, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And the paper that my advisor published was, I think, 7 pages, and it took me about 4 to 5 hours to read it because I really had to research so much stuff while reading it.
Wow.
That was when I was new to the chair, and it was more biological physics than computer science. So it was a lot of stuff that I didn't knew.